So auto insurance. They own a home, so the bank tells them they have to. But you really, in this case, should be looking about it as, what do I have to protect? Because if something bad happens, I don't want to lose everything that I've spent years building up because I didn't have the right insurance in place. We'll cover what an umbrella is, why they're important. Interesting thing here is that insurance policies are not all the same, and we'll cover that more. And then at the end, how you can purchase a policy through Connecta Insurance Services and one of their consultants. So the first thing, basics of a personal umbrella policy is it's really designed to sit on top of your auto and your home policy. And if you have boats and watercraft, those two, but think of it as, you buy auto insurance when you have a car. And that protects the car if you're in an accident and protects you if you run into somebody and cause some damage. You buy homeowners insurance in case your house burns down, in case somebody slips and falls. But oftentimes the amount of coverage you buy there may not be enough to cover your assets. And that's where an umbrella policy comes in. It goes on top of those two policies, hence the term used, umbrella, kind of as all-encompassing. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is you want to spend in this next 20 minutes or we talk is thinking about how much do you have to lose. So think about it, wherever you are in your lifetime, you've spent a certain amount of time acquiring items. So you may have a house, you have a car, you have an investment, you have your 401k, your bank accounts. So very quickly in your head, or if you have a piece of paper, kind of put that together and write that down, and whatever that number is. So think about your 401k, your house, any personal belongings that you have, any bank accounts. And then subtract from that very quickly, if you have a mortgage, what that mortgage amount is, or any other loans. What's left is your net worth. And so if you have, a net worth of several $100,000 or more, and you get into an accident and your insurance doesn't cover all of the damage that happens that you're liable for, your net worth is at risk. And even if you don't have a high net worth, you could be liable for future payments. So they can, if you lose, they can place a garnishment on your wages, and you may be paying off debts for years to come. And that's the way you should be thinking about an umbrella policy. It is there in the worst case scenario. So these are case studies that we have, and they're very realistic. So in this first one we want to go over, one of our insureds went away for the weekend. He left their teenage daughter at home. She decided to have some friends over. Many of you on the phone can probably relate to this, either to your kids doing this or when you were kids and your parents left. And unfortunately, in this case, the house caught fire and several people were badly injured. Now, the homeowner's policy had enough to cover the damage to the house. So that was fine. But the liability part, or the part that you would buy insurance if somebody else were hurt, was only $300,000, which is a typical amount on a homeowner's policy. Well, you can imagine in this case, if teens are badly injured or burned, those medical bills and pain and suffering are going to easily go past the $300,000 mark. And in this case, the person didn't have an umbrella and were forced into bankruptcy. If an umbrella had been in place beforehand, it would have covered for those additional losses beyond what the homeowners had. So a little bit of background on the umbrella policy, and I think it's important because it says where we're going as a society. So umbrellas have been around for a long time. Like a lot of insurance policies came out of England and Lloyd's of London, called bumbershoot if you're in England. But they didn't really gain any traction until the 1970s. And it was then when people started to purchase them in a more significant way. No surprise that in the 70s and 80s and 90s, there was also an increase in the number of lawsuits in the US. So just think about today, if you're driving down the freeway or any major road, you probably can't go 3 blocks without seeing a billboard from an attorney saying, if you're injured in an accident, call me. You see these ads on TV. They can happen, they're everywhere. And all that increase in litigation led to more lawsuits, which led to more people being sued and payouts. So to protect themselves, people bought umbrella policies. What's interesting is it continues to evolve. So the biggest trend right now, or I shouldn't say the biggest, but the newest trend is really around social media. So most people where they live, you know, where I live, we have not only a Facebook page for our block, but we have the Nextdoor Neighbor app. And if you post something on there about a neighbor, they can sue you. You know, you can always get sued for libel or slander. One's written, one's oral. But if you write something on there, you can get sued, and especially if it wasn't true, and that can happen. And that's, you know, that's a lawsuit that really didn't even exist 15 years ago, because we didn't have the level of social media or any 15, 20 years ago that we have today. So I read the comments occasionally from some of my neighbors, and I'm like, wow, I'm not sure I would have said that. So that's an interesting thing. Then another reason to have an umbrella, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I guarantee there'll be some new way to hold somebody liable for something that they either said or did. And again, umbrella really, when you think about your risk management, so a lot of the times people spend a lot of money planning for retirement. They're planning their savings. They're trying to figure out how to either retire earlier or retire at a better level of lifestyle, so they need more money. But oftentimes the insurance part kind of gets pushed to the side. And that's really unfortunate, because it should be upfront. An umbrella should be part of a total risk management plan. And the thing here is they're not expensive. They start as a couple $100 a year for $1 million of coverage. So it really is a simple way to just protect yourself from the unforeseen. And again, before something happens, and I always tell people, it's called an accident for a reason. We never plan to have an accident, but you can plan ahead for what happens when an accident does occur. Second scenario here, again, another case study. Person's driving home from work, it's raining out a little bit. We can all relate to this in Southern California, especially the first rains of the season. Highway gets a little slippery. Another driver cuts in front of them. They crash, and then they slide into other vehicles. So in this case, the insured, or our customer, they didn't do anything wrong. Someone cut in front of them. That causes a chain reaction. But the driver that started the whole thing, they didn't have any insurance. So guess what happens? People start going after the individuals that have insurance. So this person gets sued, and multiple car accident, damages can quickly increase. Again, you want to have enough protection should your underlying limit, your auto policy, run out. So when you buy an umbrella, a little bit of the technical stuff, who are you buying coverage for? So yourself, anyone that lives in the household, a resident relative, and then anyone borrowing any of these items. So your car, maybe you have a recreational vehicle, a boat. So those people are all covered. So if your friend comes over and they borrow your car and take it out and they get into an accident, you're going to have coverage. Third case study, which I think we can all relate to, is many people in Southern California, I'm sure a lot of you on the phone have a pool. Well, in this case, you leave your kids home alone. One of them decides to invite some friends over. They do a backflip into the pool and they break their neck. I tell everybody, if you have a pool, you should have an umbrella, because pools are wonderful, but they can be dangerous. And oftentimes when something bad happens, it's big bad. Someone can drown, someone can jump in and hurt themselves. They can jump in the shallow end and get hurt. And these injuries, they really do get expensive quickly. And again, most homeowners policies, they're going to have maybe $300,000 in coverage, maybe $500,000, and that's it. If somebody gets hurt in your pool and it's a bad one, those claims are going to get expensive fast. So what's covered under an umbrella? So bodily injury, this means damage that you do to somebody else. So think of a car accident. You run into somebody and they break their back. That's bodily injury. Property damage, the damage to their car. And this happened to me when I was probably 22, 23. Luckily, nothing bad happened, but it could have. I pulled up to make a right-hand turn at a red light, and I couldn't see real clearly, and I was inching forward to see. And just as I was about to make the right-hand turn, on a red light. So if there was an accident, it would have been my fault. A Lamborghini flew past me in the lane closest to the curb. And I remember thinking at that time, you know, in today's dollars, that car's got to be worth $250,000. If I had hit that, I was in trouble because I didn't have enough insurance to pay for that. And again, it could have been any car driving by, but it happened to be a Lamborghini, and I would have been on the hook for it. So again, you can't plan for these. You know, I didn't choose, well, I didn't go, it was a good thing, but it could have been very expensive. And the last one's personal injury, which would be, so libel, slander, forceful imprisonment, things of that nature. Two most common are going to be libel or slander. And again, personal injury, there's a lot of variation in all of these policies. So consult with your insurance professional, consult with one of the connected counselors. There are differences. One of the things that people don't talk enough about is how an umbrella and either uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage comes into play. So a lot of people think of this on your auto policy. Uninsured motorist covers you if you're hit by somebody that doesn't have insurance. But what people also don't think of is underinsured. It's a little different. So if somebody has state minimum policy limits, that would be, may not be enough insurance if they hit you. So for example, in the state of California, the minimum limits were called $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident. So if somebody hits you and you end up in the hospital and you have $50,000 worth of bills, their insurance only covers $15,000. So if you don't have the coverage on your policy, that's it. You can go after the other person. You can sue them. They may not have any assets, but an umbrella will also cover additional to your auto policy as well. So key things there, and really what you think about is with uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist, all we've talked about so far in the umbrella policy is if I do damage to somebody else. At the same time, for a little bit extra, you can say, well, what if someone does damage to me and they're not covered? So again, think about if you're laid up for 6 months while you're recovering, what's your lost income? Who's going to pay to repair your car? You know, average price of a car today is like $30,000. Many people have cars that are $50,000, $60,000. If they don't have the right amount of insurance or any, who pays for that? Again, your car insurance might cover that. And then hospital and doctor bills. Again, if it's a really serious injury, you can exhaust your own insurance very quickly. An umbrella, two things to think about here. So one is called self-insured retention. So it's also really simply called a deductible. So similar to any other insurance policy, your auto or your home, you have a deductible. The deductibles on an umbrella relative to the amount of coverage are quite small. They're usually between $250 and $1,000. Some umbrella policies don't even have them. Again, they're all a little bit different. Talk to your Connecta counselor to make sure. The other part in umbrella is they often have coverage that's broader than what you ever bought. So it's called drop-down coverage. And one example is most umbrella policies have worldwide coverage, whereas your auto policy most likely covers you for driving in the US and Canada and maybe some US territories depending on the policy, and that's it. Now, there are some limitations. The suits have to be, if they're worldwide, have to be brought in the US, but this claim happened to me when I was working for a different company. We had a customer and they were on vacation in Italy with their best friends, and they were driving a car, and the driver made a U-turn and unfortunately ran over his best friend and killed him while they were on vacation. Now, their auto policy wouldn't cover them because they were in Italy. Their umbrella policy did cover them because it was worldwide coverage. Now, the lawsuit had to be brought in the U.S. Both of these people were, they were all U.S. citizens, and they brought the lawsuit here in the U.S. So there is some coverage that wouldn't normally be covered, and that's called a drop-down. So again, a little bit extra protection. I won't go into a lot of detail here, but you should know that there's 3 types of umbrella policies. The first is called following form. It means it follows the exact same language as your auto and your homeowner's policy. The second one is broader. It has its own insuring agreement. Basically, it has its own terms. And the third is called a hybrid, and it's really a combination of the first two. The important point of this slide is work with your insurance counselor to know what you're purchasing. Because again, like all policies, I mean, the media and the advertising, I shouldn't say the media, the advertising will have you think that all auto insurance policies are the same, and they're absolutely not. They're all different. Each company's is different. They all have little variations. So working with someone who can walk through that and help you explain that is really important. Umbrellas are no different. A few other types of policies that are out on the market. The first one's called stopgap. Basically, this would cover, umbrella policies have certain minimum thresholds that you have to have with your underlying auto. If you don't meet those, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's just some companies don't offer certain limits, you'd buy this policy to fill it in. The second one is called an excess. So most umbrella policies will go from $1 million, million's the minimum, to $5 million. There are people out there that have a lot of assets and they may need 20 million. So they will buy umbrella policies on top of umbrella policies to get to that 20 million. Not hard to do. We see it all day long. It's just what's called an excess. And the third, which I'll go into detail a little bit later in case there's anyone out on the call that meets this, is you can oftentimes buy an umbrella policy that covers you for your personal stuff, so your auto, your home, those things, and your business. And that's a combined, which I'll go into in a little bit. Last claims example here to show how these work. In this case, let's assume the person has a $3 million umbrella policy and their auto policy covers them for $500,000 if they have bodily injury, so if they hurt somebody else. In this particular case, the person was negligent in an accident that resulted in a $2 million judgment. So like I said, this sits on top of the auto. So the first $500,000 is paid for by the auto carrier. The next $1.5 million is paid for by whoever the insurance company is for the umbrella policy. So that's how they get split up. Just more of your information. The insurance companies, know how this works. Second one here, this is where the drop down comes in. In this case, an insured is sued by his mother-in-law for defamation of character. I would not want to be there for Thanksgiving dinner. In this particular case, personal injury, so the defamation of character, is not covered by their homeowner. So they have no coverage from their homeowner's policy. But because the umbrella has a drop down, it covers him. And in this case, the mother-in-law won the $100,000 lawsuit and the personal umbrella policy paid it. So without the umbrella, the person would have been liable for the $100,000 on his own. So when you're looking for coverage, and this somewhat applies to umbrella, but really applies for anything, you should really be looking for a partner who has experience in what you're doing. In this case, it's umbrella, so that your Connecta insurance counselors. They have choices, so not just one insurance company out there, because what if the one that they offer doesn't fit? For umbrellas, can they offer enough coverage to meet your needs? In this case, our partnership with Connecta, we can write up to 25 million. And then, as with a lot of things that deal with auto insurance, can they handle young drivers? Can they handle older drivers? People with accidents, people are called target risk. So these are people that are more likely to get sued because their name is in the news. They're on social media. So actors, athletes, public figures, social media influencers. And then on the homeowner side, there are certain dogs that their companies underwrite or against them because there's a propensity for them to be a little bit more dangerous. So can they help you out and find coverage if you have one of those types of dogs? I mentioned earlier about the combined commercial and personal policy, and this is really good for two very different types of groups of people. The first would be if you have a lot of rental properties, it's very hard to find coverage sometimes, umbrella coverage for that. This policy is designed for someone that has a lot of rental properties, so 10, 20, 30. The other is if you're a business owner, so you may own a retail operation, you might be a doctor, a lawyer, a real estate agent, an insurance agent. you can combine the umbrella policy for your office, so not your medical malpractice if someone gets hurt on the operating table, but someone comes to your office and they slip and fall while they're there, that liability coverage on the same policy as your homeowners. And it's good because it makes just things easier. Oftentimes it's less expensive, and there's no issue of which insurance company would cover, especially if you're using a car that you might use for both your business and your personal life. So it's called the Big Umbrella. Again, folks at Connected can help you out with this, but very unique policy, really designed for those individuals that either have a lot of rental property or certain types of jobs. So that's really it for now. We can take some Q&A. I'll turn this back to Anna for now.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you to everyone that's attended. To make sure that you are covered for the unexpected, contact Connected Insurance Services at 800-905-4466, option 2. We would be glad to answer any questions and give you a quote for an umbrella. So we do have a few questions here. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat or the Q&A. And we'll go ahead and get started with, let's see. Dave has a question. Does an umbrella policy also raise the assets available to sue? Or does it always preserve your assets up to the umbrella amount?
I think I understand the question. So let's just say you have $500,000 in true assets and $1 million umbrella. If in discovery, plaintiff finds out that you have an umbrella policy for $1 million, it is possible that they are now going to try and increase the amount that they're going to go for up to the insurance policy. No different than any time you have an insurance policy out there that, people will try and find out the amount and then oftentimes go to that. Of course, the merits of the case still have to stand. I hope that answers the question.
All right, thank you. I do see a question from Milton Mutra. I'm not exactly sure if you could just maybe clarify, Milton. We would love to answer your question. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to Peter's question here. Peter is a real estate agent. Will this cover my errors and omissions insurance?
No, errors and omission would be separate.
All right, thank you. And we also have a question from Corwin. Does a living trust provide any protection?
Liz, I know we can write in a trust, but I don't know if you can clarify or better answer that question.
Absolutely. The living trust may be added as an additional insured onto the umbrella. So that kind of depends on what's being protected for. Hope that answers the question, because living trust provides any protection. That kind of has, I'm not quite understanding, and if I did answer your question, let me know.
Yeah, I think we can add the living trust as part of the policy. I'd say the second half, as far as whether it adds true protection, is probably better answered by a lawyer. The living trust part of providing protection.
All right, thank you. And Sharon is asking, is there any benefit in having an umbrella policy with the same company that has all of your insurance policies?
It's really personal preference. There shouldn't really any legal or I shouldn't say insurance protection. You're going to get the same protection if you split them up. What I think you really want to pay attention to is more, since all policies are different, which policy is better tailored for you is really the question that you should be asking, as opposed to splitting them up amongst them.
And Sharon, with us as well at Connected Insurance Services, there are discounts for bundling together. So you may be able to get a better rate by having auto, home, and umbrella in the same place. All right, and Paul is asking, does the umbrella policy cover personal business such as multi-level marketing, MLS, as healthcare advocacy such as Young Living or doTERRA?
So the umbrellas won't generally cover professional liability. They're going to cover bodily injury, property damage, personal injury, but usually there's an exclusion for professional liability. So.
All right, thank you. And Peter asked, I may have missed this part, but do I need auto insurance to have an umbrella policy?
So if you have a car, you need auto insurance. If you don't, that's a different story. Correct, Liz?
Sorry, what was that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I was just double checking with Liz, but yeah, so if you have a car, you need it. If you don't, because then you're gonna have a gap and it's gonna be a problem. But if you don't have a car, then you don't need it.
And Gordon is saying, I have 7 rental properties. On 4 of those condominium properties, I self-insure for internal damage. Would umbrella insurance cover me for any liability I incur on the self-insured properties?
You're always going to need the liability component. So even if you're self-insured for the contents, which the umbrella would never pay for the contents part, on your own business, on your own stuff, you're still going to need an underlying policy for the liability. So if someone were to slip and fall, you're going to need an underlying policy for that.
Corwin Lee has a really great question. What is the general guideline to how much the umbrella policy should cover? Up to your net worth?
So we get asked this a lot, and it's really what your comfort level is and how much risk you want to take. Again, best handled one-on-one with your insurance agent, so someone from Connecta. We have some individuals who might have a net worth of $100 and they want to buy $200 worth of insurance because they don't want to take a chance. And we have others, these are just examples, who might have $100 worth of net worth and they're willing to put half of it on the line, so they buy $50 worth of insurance. So very much an individual question on how much you're willing to put at risk. Me personally, I'm not willing to put any of my own stuff at risk.
All right, and Robert's asking, the umbrella has to be tied to all of your policies, correct?
So if you have a homeowner and a car, it would cover, you need insurance on those. If you have motorcycles and boats, it would cover those and it needs to be tied. Forgetting about the big umbrella, personal commercial, it would be separate from anything you'd have on the commercial side, but anything you'd own on a personal umbrella, anything that you own on the personal side that you need insurance for, those all need to be tied. You can't just leave part of it out. So if you have 5 cars, you can't just leave 2 of them out and only insure 3. You'd have to have, all of them would have to be linked together.
Thank you, Mitch. So we have a few situational questions here. I have heard that your insurance policies, home, auto, etc., have to have high limits in order to add umbrella policy. So I have 250,000 limit on auto. It needs to be increased to 500,000 or other amount. Is that true? So with us, it definitely varies, but 250, 500,000 is very standard to also have an umbrella policy. So if you're already at the 250,000 mark, we should be able to get you an umbrella as well. Our insurance consultants would be glad to take a look at your current policy and see what we can do for you on adding that umbrella.
I agree.
So let me see, I'm just making sure that we have all the questions answered here. So we have kind of an underwriting question. This person had an umbrella with us, but it was not renewed because there was a young driver started to drive at the age of 17. That driver is now 22 years old. The person's asking if they're more likely to be able to get an umbrella policy again because the younger driver is now 22 as opposed to 17.
Yeah, yes. I mean, assuming there's no other issues such as tickets and accidents out there, but a 22-year-old with a clean driving record and parents that are, average age and clean driving record should not be a problem.
Perfect. Yeah, I definitely suggest taking a look at that option again with our consultants and see what we would be able to find for you. The great thing about Connected Insurance Services is that we can shop around multiple carriers and try and find something that best fits your needs. Peter's asking, would it make financial sense for me to lower my current auto policy limits and buy an umbrella policy?
Well, so going back to the earlier question, umbrellas do have a minimum requirement of usually 255. So if you have limits above that, that might be an option you might want to discuss with your agent of lowering it to 255 and then buying an umbrella. But you couldn't lower your limits to like the state minimum at 1530 and buy an umbrella because you need to have that 255 limit.
Thank you. And Lynn was asking, she has 13 properties that she manages. She's curious if that would be enough for a big umbrella.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Does anybody else have any other questions? I think we've answered them all so far. See, we are going to have the link available for the slides as well as the presentation. So anyone that joined late or wants to view this information again, definitely can. We'll make that link available to you all. Oh, and Gail was asking, how much does a $1 million umbrella typically cost?
So they start as low as in California, as low as $230 a year. That's a pretty simple 2 cars, 1 house, no young drivers, $1 million in coverage. And they can go up from there, but generally speaking, most umbrella policies are a few $100s a year. So they're not that expensive. Again, especially when you think most people are paying probably $1,000 to $2,000 a year for their car insurance, probably $1,000 a year for their home insurance. For an extra few $100s to make sure you're fully, you have a lot more protection is really quite a bargain.
Awesome. Let's see. I think we have a few more here. This one's situational. It's from Paul. He was burglarized and had minor property damage, and jewelry and personal items were taken. Their AAA did not cover, did very little to cover the loss and told us they would raise the premium to 45%. Would the umbrella cover more? So the umbrella doesn't cover personal property, right, Mitch?
Yeah, correct. It's not your own personal property. So this would all be handled with the homeowner's insurer, so in this case, AAA. So the umbrella wouldn't have done anything in this case to help you out.
So for the home, I have a question. It is mostly, the umbrella mostly covers liability, right? Is there anything else that that it would cover in a home claim situation?
No, it's really going to cover, to your point, liability, liability. Well, it's liability, property damage, and personal injury. So on a homeowner's case, most of the time you're right. It's going to be somebody gets hurt at your house, someone gets bit by your dog, someone gets hurt by your pool, slip and fall in the kitchen, or you've slandered or libeled somebody, either just said it, or you put it on social media, or however that may have happened, or you, those are going to be the more common causes that you have. Or your kid does something that causes damage, like, you know, kids playing with matches and burns the neighbor's house down, right? It's going to go through your homeowners first and then into your umbrella.
And let's go ahead and end it with this really great question from Levon Gilmore. Does your umbrella policy cover assets in multiple states?
Yeah, so coverage is worldwide. So if you have a house in California and you have a house in Nevada and you get sued, the umbrella is going to cover all of your assets.
You know what, let's end it on this one because Erica asked a really great question. How has COVID changed umbrella coverage?
We haven't seen any impact at all from COVID with respect to our umbrella policies or products. None of the language has changed. We've yet to see any COVID-related claims that I'm aware of. So far, really no change.
Well, good to hear. If anybody has any other questions or if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Anna Franks, and I can forward your question over to Mitch too if I don't know the answer. Also, you can always call Connected Insurance Services, again, 800-905-4466, option 2 to get a quote. And if you reach out to me, my contact information is on the registration email that you received. So you'll see my email there. But thank you all for attending. Thank you, Mitch and Liz, for all of the information. And thank you for doing our webinar.